Conversations with Chinenye.
Nation building is not just about a particular sector. It's a culmination of different things. Those who are trying to create jobs, those who are trying to change laws, policies, those who are running for office, those who are building civil society organizations. It's a collective, concerted effort. And, you know, the truth is you pass through so many persecutions. You pass through instances, like you mentioned, of being taken to court, being charged for an offense, you know, or getting arrested. You would risk your life in so many ways. And I know instances, you know, that has happened as well. And, you know, we must be willing and able to make those sacrifices if we really want the nation of our dreams. So I want to touch on the issue of institutions. There is this thing that I hear a lot of people, young people sometimes, who are very competent, or even older people, who have worked the private sector, they've flourished, they've gone to the best schools in the world. They come to Nigeria, maybe they get appointed to head a government agency. 4 years goes by and people are asking, what have they produced? What results can we see? And when you come a little bit closer to those people, you engage with them. Some people tell you our hands are tied. Some people say, oh, you know, it's the system. No matter how good you are, it's the system. And so when you look a little bit closer, and even with the work we do at AFPC, Africa Policy Conversations, you see a lot of those issues where, look, these people at the top might be are really trying to implement this thing, but there's a capability trap. It's just not, you know what I mean? It's like they've made this promise, they've gone out on TV to say they will do this. But in reality, be it because there's a capacity problem there, I don't know, funding, just weak institutions. So if we're building a nation stands on institutions. Other parts of the world, if something does, even if you're a president, you commit an offense, the institutions are strong. You'll be investigated if you need to be removed. Like, law enforcement will clamp down on you. It's not just one man controlling all the... So what do we do about this problem about weak institutions in our country where you don't have a strong judiciary or a strong, you know, what do we do about that issue?
So 2 quick points. So, and we need to, and I guess we're situating this discussion again, you know, nation building. And I wanted to make the point that the whole concept of nation building, the building part, is a present continuous tense. And what that presupposes is that nation building is a process. It's not an event.
That's true.
And so we have to be prepared to continuously do what? Take actions that advance what? That helps and strengthens different aspects of our national life. I wanted to make that point. So, because we're never going to get to a point where we say, oh, a nation has been built.
Yeah, that's true.
The whole nation building is a continuous process.
True.
And we have to keep building, keep reforming, and keep redesigning and retooling, you know, how we engage our nation. And I think the point about institutions, when you hear institutions, you hear things like, you know, norms, standards, practices within institutions. And I perhaps just look at this from a micro point of view. And you pick one institution. I'm sure you've interfaced with several public institutions, given the excellent work you do. And there's one particular practice within, you know, public institutions that impacts on the quality of governance. And it's this whole concept of moving files. How files move from one desk to another. And the fact that in some institutions, before a file moves from different offices, there are several actions, you know, that need to happen to facilitate the process of moving files. You either need to grease someone's hands, or you need to accelerate the process just to fast track that the files that contains memos that requires a certain policy action, you know, needs to move. And this is it's a practice in our public institution.
Yeah.
The fact that you need to do what? To either pay to get files moved from one desk to another is a fundamental problem. Because it tells you that within those institutions, there are rules that are not obeyed, and there's no compliance with rules, because rules actually don't count. The second, it's about the patronage system that seems to regulate every aspect of our life. So one of those persons that you've highlighted, and people who come from these institutions, they get into this institution. The first call that they receive is either a family member who wants them to be recruited, right? Or their traditional ruler or their religious leader who has got a list of people who should be employed in that particular institution, without recourse to whether those people are qualified or competent for that particular position. They just don't care. The fact that you are now in position of authority and power, for a lot of people, they become beholden, to their family members and their social networks also. And so we need to reverse that these practices weaken institutions.
Yeah.
Because when it's time to demand for accountability, because of the patronage system, it becomes very difficult to hold people to account. And this is why I always say this, that when you beg and lobby to be appointed, right, into those positions, keep in mind that those who have taken a decision to either advocate and ensure that you get that employment, that you're going to pay back. And so if you're not careful, you might spend your tenure just servicing interest, because there are lots of interests that are shaping how our public institutions are functioning. And so these are some of the issues when you look at our public institutions. But also things about institutional independence is lost when patronage informs, structures, and defines how institutions actually work, and when there's lack of accountability. And so access to information, don't get me wrong, there are institutions that are strong. And if you go check those institutions,
can you give me some examples of
why
some strong
those institutions are strong? So if you look at the National Human Rights Commission, is one institution that to a large extent, has demonstrated capacity to be independent, and also defend the rights, of citizens. We've also seen institutions that have regulatory functions, and all these institutions that have regulatory functions that can hold, several institutions to account, do so because of the instrumentality of the law that actually creates them. So if you look at NCC is a regulator.
Yes, that's the Nigerian Communications Commission.
Called Commission.
Yeah.
And what it has done in regulating what telcos in Nigeria. And recently, you also saw what the Nigerian Electricity Regulatory Commission did by fining or imposing a fine on the Abuja Electricity Distribution Company for doing what? For charging, for implementing the electricity tariff across board, and they were fined 200 million. You could see even the Consumer Protection Council, as a regulatory institution. And a lot of these institutions, to a large extent, are able to function in the manner that they function because the regulatory framework gives them the autonomy for doing so. But you also have other institutions that are so weak. And one of the other reasons is this duplicity in the number of institutions that we have. Yes, we have the Orosanye report that talks about rationalizing, but you can see in 2 or 3 institutions that have the same functions. And so you have institutional rivalry. And when you have institutional rivalry, rather than have the institutions focus on delivering on their mandates, they are busy competing against each other, and they spend public time and public resources just fighting institutional war. But then the country is actually suffering and the country is losing, a lot of resources. So these are some of those reasons why you have this weak institution. But I think at the heart of this, is the leadership recruitment process.
Absolutely.
As long as the leadership recruitment process isn't transparent, isn't informed by, competence, isn't informed by capacity to deliver, and you have a situation where, appointment into public institutions is a reward, for either campaigning for a particular politician or being a member of a political party, you're going to have huge problems.
So I really want to, because I know that we're running out of time, there are 3 things I want to touch on. When you talk about leadership recruitment, for those who don't know, you're speaking about elections.
Not just elections, including appointments, as well. Because everyone, how many elective offices are there in Nigeria?
Exactly.
They are just, at least, there are less than 10,000. There are about 11,000 elective offices across the country for a population of over 200 million. So everyone is not going to be elected, right? Because the positions are little. But you also have appointive positions. And when I mean appointive, it's not a situation where a governor appoints 200 or 1,008.
Special advisor.
That is absolute bunkum, and it's a waste of public resources.
So now, when you talk about this leadership recruitment, I want to focus on the elective side of it, right?
Okay.
Which is the offices, the 11,000 offices you mentioned, right? One of the challenges that we have during elections in Nigeria, even in Africa, is this issue of tribe and religion. Now, I'm going to bring it to a second question, but I want to ask this question. My second question will be on the elite consensus. But right now, I want to talk about the fact that when we have candidates campaigning, maybe they have a manifesto, they have a policy agenda, you see people sometimes then default to tribe and religion. So this person is not from my place. That even in states, there's all this issue around tribe and religion. So how can we get to a better, this leadership recruitment? How can Nigerians focus on the best candidate for the job, despite where he's from?
That's a very tough one. And first, the fact that people defer to their ethnic identities isn't a problem.
It's not a problem.
Because identities are critical, and people they are very passionate about their identity, because identity is who you are. Now, if someone identifies either as a Christian or as a Muslim, they have a right to do so, and we have a duty to respect that. In the same way, if someone identifies, if you're from a particular ethnic group, no one should discriminate against you on the basis of what? Of your ethnic or religious identity. But you have a situation where people are discriminated against. Opportunity, access to opportunity is regulated.
Exactly.
Based on what? Your tribe ethnicity. Or your ethnicity. Now, that's not how a country makes progress.
Exactly.
What a country does, especially for a country that is so plural like Nigeria, is to create what? Opportunity for all.
Okay.
Regardless of your ethnic or your religious identity. And in creating opportunity for all, you must also ensure that everyone
is included.
Can
I ask a question?
And that's a tough.
Can I ask a follow-up question? Rwanda, case in point, they had genocide. People killed, hundreds of thousands of people. They removed, so you don't have state of origin. You can't say I'm Tutsi, you're just Rwandan. Can't we just have just Nigerian? You
need to create that sense, right? And if you check the Rwandan story, even though that sense of national identity, has been established, but Rwanda isn't as heterogeneous as Nigeria.
Okay.
So forging that consensus and building national identity would take us time. But this is where the point about elite consensus actually comes in.
Thank you for bringing that in.
That the elites of these different traditional and ethnic groups need to come to a point where they see Nigeria as what? As one indivisible nation. And it begins with our constitution, which is a political document. Now, a lot of people feel that there are structural inequities in our constitution. And I dare say that there are structural inequities in our constitution. You know, a constitution that recognizes a particular state that has over 40-something local governments, and then another state that has perhaps equal landmass and maybe even equal population, does not have that same number of local governments. What you have done is you've tilted the balance of power in favor of a particular state that has that high number of local governments. And so you need to actually look at how do you restructure the country in a way that justice and equity is upheld. If you don't do that, there's no way this discussion about a national purpose or identity, you know, can be forged. The second part is the whole process of constitution making. I tell you, and I say this, you know, as a student of constitutional law, there are certain constitutional reforms that you cannot push because there are sections of the country that have the highest number of legislators in the National Assembly. And so for you to forge and secure an amendment to the Constitution in that light, you need the numbers, and so you have to build that consensus. And it is sad in our polity that bipartisanship is not a value that shapes how public decisions are made, whether in the National Assembly or across board. We don't even agree on, I don't see what we agree on. We don't agree on anything. Even the political parties themselves, if as simple as reforms to our electoral process, we don't agree on as simple as, yes, we can have all elections in one day. You would never agree. Why? Because it will save us cost. But when you put forward those proposals, a particular political party will say no, because it does not secure electoral victory. Not because it costs the country a lot of money to hold elections on separate days. That's not the philosophy. For them, they are more interested in how will this confer benefits to their own political party and not all. So that sense, it's not there. But I'm not saying it cannot be forged. But this is where citizens also have a critical role to play.
And I want to clarify that, because we've made a very important point now, and it almost breaks my heart, if I'm being very honest with you. This sense of, you know, being in a society that is unjust and inequitable. I'm a woman, I'm from the Southeast, you know, and people from the Southeast have also complained about marginalization amongst other people from other regions in this country. But I think we've also gotten to a point in this country where the status quo doesn't favor anyone, in the sense that, yes, the elites might have money, but the average citizen, and especially the poor masses, from every tribe, be it Hausa, Igbo, Yoruba, Igala, Ibibio, everybody is feeling the pinch. Now, I want to juxtapose this with nations like the Asian tigers and other nations that were actually almost at the same power with Nigeria when, you know, we all, after independence and all that. They got to a point where they told themselves, the elites got to a point, you know, where they told themselves, enough is enough. We don't want to be poor anymore. We don't want to be abused. We just want to have a good life. I drive across the streets in Nigeria. I see poverty, although there are snippets of hope and progress and prosperity. But we're talking about at scale for the majority. Now, I'm not just talking about the few, for the majority. And I keep asking myself every day, how can we have, you know, that elite consensus for people to say, you know what, we're tired of taking advantage of the system. We're tired of corruption. We now want to live for the greater good. Now, do you think it's possible? Is it just wishful thinking on my part to want a country that works for the majority? But if you think it's possible, how can we achieve it?
Well, I just want to say that if you're waiting for this current political class to come to a point where they say they want the country to work for all, then I think you need to wake up from this dream, because that's an illusion.
Wow.
That's one. Two, in this same political class, there are a few of them who are beginning to feel the pain that they have caused this country and are retracing their steps. Our duty is to identify who are those people who are still in the reins of power, who want to forge that consensus. And it's not consensus to recycle themselves in office.
Exactly.
It's consensus to do what? It's a consensus on development, it's a consensus on nation building, and it's also a consensus on what? On how we include people in every aspect of our national life. Thirdly, citizens can force that consensus. And this is where this using your voice to hold leaders to account actually matters. And it also begins with how we as citizens treat each other.
Yeah.
Because it's at the heart of this. Do you see a Muslim person first as human and then also a Nigerian, and you treat them, as human beings first? The dignity, as we relate with each other, do we uphold and respect the dignity of the human person? Because I tell you, if you look at all the killings and all the kidnappings happening across the country, they're committed by fellow Nigerians. Are they politicians? No. Yes, some of these killings may be sponsored by politicians, but it's about we as a people. How we treat each other in our little community actually matters. And this is, if we have every Nigerian, the 200 million of us, come to a point where we say, no, and enough is enough. We're going to do what? We're going to rethink how we view each other. We're going to have mutual respect for each other. That we're not going to do what? Insult, engage in any act that undermines each other's religion, each other's culture, and we're going to create that space where our diversity, which is our strength, is respected. It will force the political class to rethink.
So you think that
when you go to elections,
from the citizens, is it the citizens?
I've said it will come from the political class.
Okay,
it
but
will come from citizens.
So
but citizens have a role
approach.
Because when you're going to elections and all you care about is whether the candidate sponsored by a political party comes from your religion or comes from your ethnic group, and you don't think about whether they have a sense of national purpose or they have a vision for the country, you are contributing.
That's true.
To this polarization within our society. And these are the kinds of conversations we need to have, as a country.
Yeah.
But we must also have those conversations conscious of the fact that the balance of power is actually in favor of some people, and that there is a section of the country, there is a dimension of this conversation that disproportionately disempowers a category. Because in terms of equity, we say, yes, all humans are equal, but in today's Nigeria, some people are more equal than the others, because we are not all equal. If you look at the economic, the inequality indicators or indices, clearly tells you that we're such an unequal society. Yeah. Access to both political and economic opportunity, there's just inequities, and some of these is our constitution that needs to change. And this is why the constitutional review process provides an opportunity. And Nigerians should bombard, pressure their legislators, both at the national and the state level, including governors, that this constitutional review that presents an opportunity, we leverage it to decondense, decentralize power, distribute resources and distribute wealth, so that every part of the country feels included, in this economic agenda or this political transformation agenda that seems to be driving how we are ruling our affairs.
Wow. I think this is a good place to end the conversation.
That's right.
Yeah. But I just want to reiterate the point you just made around inclusion. There's so much inequality. And you get to a stage where you hear about certain number of billionaires in the country. They keep getting richer and richer. They keep going up on Forbes lists. But then the poor people keep getting poorer and poorer. The last time the data was 130 million people.
I think it's increased. That's increased. The
multidimensional poverty. So
index.
A huge majority of our population are poor people. And these poor people, it's not because they're not intelligent. It's not because they don't have the ideas. It's just because they lack the opportunity. Yeah. They lack the access. And they don't have leaders who think about them. So, each and every one of us has a role to play. right? Just to wrap up the conversation, I just want you to give a call to action, especially to those who are in the civic space, those, especially younger people who are getting involved, who want to raise their voices, who want to make a difference. What advice do you have to them, give to them?
That you need to make your voice count. You need to make your numbers count. That in a democracy, voice and numbers matter a lot. And if young people who are in majority use their voice, use their phones, use social media, they can actually transform and alter this train that seems to be heading in a direction that would not benefit all of us. So use your numbers, make your voices count. And there are several ways you can do that. Ask your leaders questions. Engage with your leaders. Don't fold your hands, sit on the sidelines and just be criticizing. No. Every Nigerian is represented by one, a local government chairman, a councillor, a member in your state house of assembly, a senator, a House of Reps member, a governor, and a president. So there are about how many people? About 7 people who are representing you. Pick one of them and hold them to account. That's only when we're going to fix this country.
I love it. Thank you so much. I like that you talked about accountability, and you know, this is an interview I'm sure people are going to go back and watch over and over again. I just want to thank you, and I just hope,
thanks. The pleasure.
I hope that you will keep doing the work. You will not grow weary in doing good, and I hope that this conversation has also inspired people out there. For all of you joining, thank you so much for being here. The call to action is to go out there, get involved, use your voice, use your smartphone, use social media. Let's continue to raise our voices. Let's continue to build that consensus amongst ourselves as young people. And then for those who are in position of authority, it's time for you to, leverage that position you have for the greater good. I know there are people out there who are trying to make a difference, and I know it's very difficult, but we must not give up. This is the only country we have, this is the only continent we have, and we must all join hands to make this country work for all of us. Thank you. My name is Chinenye. Make sure you like, subscribe, share with a friend, and join the conversation online and offline. It's been a pleasure hosting you, Samson. And
thanks for having me. Always a delight.
Thank you so much. Make sure you join us on our next episode. Goodbye. Conversations with Chinenye.